99% of orange cat owners will watch this list and think they already know their cat inside and out. They don't, because most of what actually makes an orange cat is hiding in plain sight, in places you have walked past 1,000 times without ever really looking. Some of these facts are buried inside genetics papers nobody outside a laboratory ever reads. Some are hiding directly under your cat's fur and only show up when the light hits just right. One of them only appears when your cat gets wet. And the very last fact on this list is the reason so many orange cat owners say the exact same strange thing when you ask them to describe their cat, that somehow it feels less like they chose the cat and more like the cat chose them. Stick around for that one. And before we start, I want to say this properly, because it matters more than the usual line people throw in before a video like this. If you have an orange cat, you already know they are not like other cats, not in temperament, not in the way they follow you room to room, not in the way strangers online seem to instantly recognize that exact color and smile before they even read the caption. What most owners never get is a full, honest look at why that is, past the surface-level jokes about orange cat energy and clumsiness. So this list is going deep, further than most videos on this topic ever bother to go, pulling from genetics, history, and thousands of small observations reported by owners just like you, comparing notes without ever realizing how much they actually had in common. Some of what is coming up will genuinely surprise you, even if you have lived with one of these cats your entire life. Let's dive in. Number 1. Your cat's eyes were never supposed to stay that color. Think back, if you can, to the very first time you saw your orange cat as a kitten. If you go far enough back, past the fluff, past the wobbling legs, there is a good chance those eyes were not gold. They were a hazy, milky blue-gray, almost like a diluted marble. Every kitten on Earth, regardless of color, is born with that same clouded blue, because the pigment cells responsible for adult eye color have not finished migrating into the iris yet. But here is the part almost nobody tracks. In orange cats specifically, that transformation runs on a slightly different timeline than it does in black or gray cats, often finishing later and pulling harder toward warm tones, gold, copper, amber, sometimes a deep hazel green. It is the same pigment, pheomelanin, the one responsible for the coat, quietly finishing its second job in the eyes months after the fur is already done. So if you have photos of your cat from kittenhood to adulthood lined up side by side, look closely at the eyes in each one. You are not just watching a color settle, you are watching the exact same chemical process that painted the coat slowly finish painting the eyes, weeks after everyone assumed it was already finished. What makes this even stranger is how differently it plays out from cat to cat. Some orange kittens settle into their final eye color by 12 weeks. Others keep shifting subtly for months, drifting from a pale yellow-green into a deep, almost molten copper well past their first birthday, so gradually that an owner living with the cat every single day rarely notices it happening in real time. It usually takes an old photo, pulled up by accident, to make it obvious. You look at the picture, then you look at the cat asleep next to you, and for a second the two almost do not look like the same animal at all, even though nothing about the cat itself ever stopped for a moment. Number 2. There is no such thing as one shade of orange. Line up 10 orange cats and you will not find 2 that match. One is pale and almost buttery. One is deep, rusty, nearly red. One looks like it was dipped in caramel. Most owners assume this is random, just how genetics happens to land. It is not random at all. There is a second, completely separate gene working quietly behind the orange gene, one that most owners have never heard of, sometimes called the dilution gene. The orange gene decides that the cat will carry warm pigment at all. This second gene decides how concentrated that pigment actually sits in each strand of fur. Turn it one way, and you get a deep, almost fox-colored red. Turn it the other way, and the same base color gets stretched thin into a soft cream. Which means the exact shade sitting on your couch right now, the one you probably think of as simply orange, is actually the result of 2 separate genetic decisions stacking on top of each other, one saying yes to warmth, and one deciding exactly how loud that warmth gets to be. No breeder designed it. No 2 cats, unless they are related, will ever land on the exact same setting. This is also why 2 orange kittens from the same litter can grow up looking almost unrelated. One brother comes out looking like a lit match, deep and saturated. The other comes out soft and pale, almost blonde, and yet genetically they are as close as siblings can possibly be. Owners who adopt littermates are sometimes stunned a year later at how differently the two turned out. Convinced someone at the shelter must have mixed up the paperwork. Nobody did. The dial simply landed in a different place for each kitten, quietly, before either of them had opened their eyes for the first time. Number 3. Sunlight is quietly redecorating your cat. Here is one you can test yourself. Tonight, if your cat has a favorite sunny spot on the windowsill or the back of the couch, run your fingers along the parts of the coat that get the most sun, usually the top of the head, the shoulders, the base of the tail, and compare it to the fur underneath, the parts that almost never see direct light. In a lot of orange cats, there is a visible difference. The sun-exposed fur runs slightly lighter, almost bleached, like a subtle natural highlight. This happens because ultraviolet light slowly breaks down the same pigment responsible for the color, pheomelanin, the exact same pigment mechanism that causes human red hair to fade paler in the summer. Cats who spend hours a day sunbathing are, quite literally, having their coat lightened by the sun in real time, one nap at a time. It happens so gradually that almost no owner ever notices the shift happening. They only notice, months later, that the cat somehow looks a little different than the kitten photos, and they can never quite explain why. Indoor cats who avoid sunny windows almost never show this effect, which is exactly why the difference stands out so clearly once you know to look for it. A strictly indoor orange cat that sleeps in shaded corners will often stay close to the same shade for years. A sun-worshipping cat with a favorite windowsill can visibly shift a shade or two lighter across a single bright summer, then deepen slightly again once the darker months set in and the sunbathing slows down. Some owners who track it closely enough joke that their cat has seasons, the same way a landscape does, quietly lightening and darkening on a yearly clock that has nothing to do with age and everything to do with how many afternoons were spent parked in a sunbeam. Number 4. And this one you will want to check right now if your cat is nearby. Look closely around the eyes. Most owners know about the faint tabby stripes running down an orange cat's back. Almost nobody checks the eyes. If you look closely, right at the inner corner where the fur meets the eye, a lot of orange tabbies carry a very faint, almost invisible dark line tracing downward, similar in position and function to the dark tear-line markings you see on a cheetah's face. In big cats, that marking is believed to reduce glare from the sun, almost like built-in eye black on an athlete's cheekbones, helping the eyes stay sharp and focused while hunting in bright daylight. In a domestic orange cat, the marking is usually so pale and so thin that it disappears entirely unless the light catches it at the right angle. It is one of the oldest hunting adaptations still quietly sitting on your cat's face, doing a job that has not been necessary in generations, on an animal whose most dangerous hunt this week was a red dot from a laser pointer. Number 5. Some orange cats are hiding an extra toe, and it traces back to real ships. Reach down right now and count your cat's toes. Most cats have 18 total, 5 on each front paw, 4 on each back paw, but a noticeable number of orange and ginger patterned cats carry an extra toe or two, a trait called polydactyly, giving them wide, almost mitten-like paws. This is not evenly distributed by chance. Certain ginger bloodlines, especially ones tracing back to old port cities and coastal New England, carry it far more often than the general cat population, because of a very practical piece of history. Sailors specifically wanted cats with extra toes on their ships. Wider paws meant better balance on a rocking, swaying deck, and better balance meant a better hunter, which meant fewer rats gnawing through rope and grain in the hold. So those cats were kept, bred, and carried from port to port, spreading the trait along old shipping routes that still show up, faintly, in cat populations today. If your orange cat has extra toes, there is a real chance that trait survived a bloodline of working cats who once earned their keep on the deck of a ship. Some of those wide-pawed lines eventually made their way inland and settled into ordinary households where the extra toe stopped being a practical hunting tool and became something owners just describe as adorable, calling them thumb cats or mitten cats without ever knowing the history riding along with the name. So the next time your orange cat needs a blanket with those unusually wide paws or presses one oversized thumb-like toe against your arm while you sleep, understand that you are looking at a physical trait that once helped an entire ship's crew stay fed, passed down through generations of cats who never left the coastline until, eventually, one of their descendants ended up on your couch. Number 6. That deep, rumbling chirp is not a normal cat sound. It is baby talk that never wore off. Listen closely the next time your orange cat greets you at the door. A huge number of owners describe the exact same sound. Not quite a meow, more of a rising chirp or trill, almost like a question. Kittens make that exact sound to call their mother back to the nest. A short, high, rolling chirrup used only between mother and litter in the first weeks of life. Most adult cats phase it out entirely once they are grown, replacing it with the more familiar meow reserved almost exclusively for communicating with humans. But orange cats, according to countless owners comparing notes online, seem to hang on to that kitten chirp far longer, sometimes for life, using it as a greeting, a demand, or simply an announcement that they have entered the room. Nobody has fully mapped out why the trait seems to linger longer in orange cats specifically, but the pattern shows up again and again. That chirp you hear every morning is not a new sound your cat invented for you. It is the oldest sound they know, the one meant only for their mother, and somewhere along the way, you became the one it is aimed at. Pay attention to when it happens most. It is rarely random. It tends to show up in the exact same handful of moments. The second you walk through the front door, the second a treat bag rustles in another room, the second your cat spots you through a window before you have even made it to the porch. Those are not casual moments to a cat. Those are homecoming moments. And homecoming is exactly what that sound was built for in the first place. A kitten calling out because the one figure that meant safety and food and warmth had just come back into view. Number 7. There is a marking most owners never check because it is hidden inside the ear. We already know about the little dark freckles that show up on an orange cat's nose and lips as they age, a harmless kind of pigment spot called lentigo. What almost nobody checks is that the exact same freckling can appear in 2 other places: the delicate skin of the eyelids and the thin inner fold of the ear. Gently pull back your cat's ear next time they are relaxed and dozing, and look at the pale skin folded inside. In a lot of older orange cats, tiny dark specks are sitting there too, quietly matching the ones on the nose, completely painless, completely harmless, simply more of the same pigment surfacing wherever the skin runs thin. It is the same slow, private map, spreading in a place designed specifically not to be looked at. Most owners live an entire lifetime with an orange cat, and never once check inside that ear. Number 8. Some orange cats are hiding a pattern that only appears when they are wet. This is one you can actually go test tonight, and it usually stuns people the first time they try it. Some short-haired orange cats, especially the ones that look almost solid with barely visible stripes, are hiding a much bolder, much clearer tabby pattern directly underneath the surface of the coat. Dry fur, especially thick fur, can blur and soften that pattern until it almost disappears to the naked eye. But wet the fur down, at bath time, after they got caught in the rain, even just cupping a handful of water over their back, and the pattern that emerges can look almost like a completely different cat. Sharp swirling stripes suddenly visible where moments ago there appeared to be almost none. Water flattens the fur against the skin and removes the fluff that was scattering and hiding the pattern. Owners who have never given their cat a bath often go their entire lives assuming their cat is nearly solid orange, with no idea there is a bold tabby cat hiding directly underneath, waiting for a rainy day to reveal itself. Number 9. In extremely rare cases, a male orange cat can also be a calico, and it comes down to 1 extra chromosome. Here is a genetics fact so rare most veterinarians only encounter it once or twice in an entire career. We already know female cats need 2 copies of the orange gene to show patchy calico or tortoiseshell coloring, while males only carry 1 copy and typically come out either fully orange or not orange at all. But every so often, through a rare chromosomal condition, a male cat is born carrying an extra X chromosome, essentially giving him the genetic instructions of both a male and, partially, a female. When that happens, and it is astonishingly uncommon, roughly 1 in 3,000 calico or tortoiseshell cats, a male cat can be born with the full patchy calico coat that should, by every normal rule, only belong to a female. These cats are almost always infertile, and because the pattern is so rare in males, a calico or tortoiseshell male cat is considered one of the rarest, most genetically unusual cats a person can own. If you have ever heard that a male calico cat is basically worth a small fortune to breeders and geneticists, that rumor is not far off. It is one of the rarest coincidences biology can produce. Veterinary clinics that stumble onto one sometimes end up documenting the case formally, simply because it is unusual enough to be worth recording. A living reminder that even a set of genetic rules considered close to absolute can occasionally be broken by nothing more than a copying error during cell division. It is not a mutation anyone selected for. It is not something any breeding program can reliably reproduce. It is closer to a genetic accident colliding with another genetic accident, twice in the same animal, producing a cat that by every normal rule of biology should not exist at all, and yet somewhere out there, quietly, a small handful of them do. Number 10. Their whiskers almost never match their fur, and there is a reason for that. Look closely at your orange cat's whiskers. Even on a deep rusty red cat, the whiskers themselves are almost always pale, white, or barely tinted, nothing close to the surrounding fur. This is not an accident of aesthetics. Whiskers develop from a different, earlier stage of cell activity in a kitten before birth, one that pigment cells have not fully colonized yet. By the time those follicles are finished forming, fur color gets painted in gradually over weeks. Whiskers are essentially locked in place chemically before that painting process ever reaches them. Which means the whiskers framing your orange cat's face are, in a very real sense, a snapshot of what the cat looked like before color ever entered the picture at all, a pale, colorless blueprint surrounding a face that eventually caught fire everywhere except there. Number 11. For most of history, sailors believed one specific color of cat brought luck, and it was this one. Ship cats were common on vessels for centuries, valued for keeping rodent populations away from food and rope. But among sailors, orange and ginger-colored cats in particular carried an outsized reputation. Old maritime folklore held that a ginger cat aboard a ship brought good fortune and safe weather, while losing one overboard was considered a terrible omen for the entire voyage. Some sailors went as far as refusing to set sail if the ship's resident ginger cat could not be found before departure. Nobody can fully explain why that specific color became attached to luck rather than any other, but the belief traveled with sailors from port to port for generations, carried in logs, letters, and superstition long before anyone understood a single thing about genetics. In a strange way, that old belief was not entirely wrong. A cat that color really was statistically more likely to be an especially confident, bold hunter, exactly the trait a ship full of grain and rope needed most. Old harbor records and sailor journals from ports across Europe repeat versions of the same superstition for centuries, passed down not because anyone could explain the genetics behind it, but because the pattern kept holding up voyage after voyage. Crews who trusted their ginger cat swore by calmer seas and fuller nets. It is easy, from a modern chair, to write that off as pure superstition, sailors looking for meaning in coincidence, the way people always have. But it is worth noticing that the trait they were actually responding to, boldness, confidence, an almost fearless approach to a loud, unfamiliar, swaying environment, is the exact same trait millions of modern owners describe today about their own orange cats, centuries later, on dry land, with absolutely no ship in sight. Number 12. No two orange tabby patterns are the same, and it works almost like a fingerprint. Stripes, swirls, spots, speckles, an orange tabby's markings are never laid down with a stencil. The exact arrangement forms during a chaotic period of development in the womb, shaped by countless tiny variables that can never repeat exactly the same way twice, even between siblings from the same litter. Which means the specific swirl over your cat's shoulder, the exact break in the stripe along the ribs, the particular spot pattern on the belly, exists nowhere else on any other cat that has ever lived or ever will. Shelters and rescues sometimes use exactly this fact to identify individual cats when microchips fail or tags go missing, photographing the unique pattern on the flank the same way a detective would photograph a fingerprint. Underneath all that fur, your cat really is one of one. Number 13. Their paw pads can carry a hint of color most owners never notice because they never look. Flip your cat's paw over next time they are relaxed enough to allow it. On plenty of orange cats, especially lighter or cream-toned ones, the paw pads carry a warm pink or soft salmon tint rather than the darker brown or black pads you see on darker-coated cats. This traces back to the same pigment story running through the whole coat, pheomelanin sitting close to the skin's surface rather than the darker eumelanin found in black or gray cats. It is such a small detail that most owners never think to check it, filed away under things they simply never had a reason to look for, sitting quietly on the bottom of a paw that spends most of its life pressed against a couch cushion. Number 14. Slow blinking might be more common in orange cats than almost any other color, according to shelter workers who see thousands of them. Every cat is capable of the slow blink, the long, deliberate half-closing of the eyes considered the closest thing to a smile in cat body language, a signal of trust and calm. But talk to enough shelter volunteers and rescue workers, and a strange pattern comes up again and again in casual conversation. Orange cats seem to offer that slow blink to complete strangers faster and more often than most other colors, sometimes within minutes of meeting someone for the first time. Nobody has run a formal study proving orange cats are wired to trust faster than other cats. But the anecdote repeats often enough, across enough shelters, that plenty of experienced cat people will tell you, half joking and half serious, that if a strange cat is going to walk up and slow blink at you first, put your money on the orange one. Some volunteers who work adoption events say it almost becomes a running joke among the staff, watching a nervous black cat take an entire week to warm up to a new visitor while the orange cat 2 cages down is already slow blinking at strangers on day one, as if it never occurred to that cat that trust was something you were supposed to earn slowly. Whether that comes down to genetics, environment, or simply the fact that a color this friendly-looking gets talked to and handled more often from the very first day of life, nobody has fully settled the debate. But the reputation did not build itself out of nothing. Number 15. The reason you almost never see a small orange cat comes down to muscle, not fat. Owners of orange cats swap the same joke constantly, that their cat is somehow always the biggest, heaviest cat in the room. Part of that is simple math, since the genetics behind orange coloring show up disproportionately in certain larger domestic breeds and mixed lines. But part of it is also observed behavior. Orange cats are consistently described by owners as bold, food-motivated, and confident enough to demand meals loudly and often, which, combined with a genuinely muscular, broad-chested body type common in ginger bloodlines, adds up to a cat that frequently outweighs cats of identical age and diet in other colors. It is not that orange cats are lazier or eat dramatically more. It is closer to the truth to say the same genetic package that gave them that fearless personality also tends to build a sturdier frame to carry it around in. Number 16. Orange has been the internet's favorite cat color since long before the internet existed. Pop culture has been quietly obsessed with orange cats for generations, long before a single meme was ever posted. Comic strips, cartoons, and children's books have leaned on the same lovable, food-obsessed, mischievous orange cat archetype for decades, a character type so recognizable that most people can picture one instantly without needing a single detail described to them. That is not a coincidence built by marketing departments. Illustrators and writers reached for that color again and again because it already carried an established reputation: loud, bold, endlessly food-motivated, exactly the personality traits real owners have been describing about their own orange cats for just as long. In other words, the fictional orange cat stereotype did not create the real one. The real one, sitting on windowsills and kitchen counters for centuries, quietly wrote the character first. Number 17. Most owners can't explain why their orange cat feels different, but almost every single one insists it does. Ask 100 different orange cat owners to describe their cat, and you will hear the same handful of words over and over: loud, loyal, ridiculous, obsessed with one specific person in the house. Ask them if the color is a coincidence, and almost none of them believe it is, even though, scientifically, color has no proven link to personality at all. And yet the pattern is strong enough, repeated by enough strangers who have never met each other, that something real seems to be happening, even if science has not fully caught up to explaining it yet. Maybe it really is coincidence, repeated so many times it stopped feeling like one. Or maybe there is something about a color this rare, this specific, born from a genetic mistake that never should have worked in the first place, that simply attracts a certain kind of animal, and eventually, a certain kind of person to love them. Either way, if you already have one of these cats curled up somewhere near you right now, you already know exactly what everyone on this list is talking about. You did not just end up with an orange cat. At some point, without ever noticing exactly when it happened, that cat decided you were the one worth keeping. Think back to how it actually started. Maybe it was a shelter cage you were only supposed to be looking at, not adopting from. Maybe it was a stray that showed up on a back porch one winter and simply never left again. Maybe it was a kitten someone else was giving away, and you told yourself you were only going to look. Almost every orange cat owner, if you ask them honestly, will admit the decision did not really feel like a decision at all. It felt more like the cat had already decided, and you were simply the last one in the house to catch up. That is the part science still cannot fully explain, and maybe it never will. And maybe that is exactly the point. If you made it all the way here, you clearly love these cats as much as I do, so I would genuinely love to know, out of everything on this list, which fact was completely new to you, and which one made you get up right now to go check your own cat. Drop it in the comments, I read every single one. And if you want more of these deep dives into the cats everyone thinks they already understand, subscribing helps more than you would think, because there are a lot more of these coming.